maybe our 15th or so, I should have counted, gathering for Mindful Poetry, which is a program we do with the Glorious On Being Project and their wonderful podcast, Poetry Unbound. And it's a pretty simple format, simple, powerful, and nourishing. We're going to begin with a meditation. We'll listen to a poem that's been selected for this event. We'll hear someone talk about the poem, folks I'm going to introduce in a second. We'll get a prompt. We'll spend about 10 minutes writing and then sharing and generous listening. So a few other things. We have, as you might be able to see, we have Cindy doing closed captioning. So if you look down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can either turn it on or off. So thank you, Cindy, for being here. Trying to think of what else. If I forget something, I will say it later. It's been a while since we gathered. I'll introduce you to a few more of our collaborators at the tail end of our day. So without any further ado, let's get to the reason we gather, which is the celebration of poetry to make meaning and find beauty and connection between and among us. So today we have two guests. Amy Tuttle, who is an arts and healing powerhouse, who's worked nationally and internationally for years, and also works with one of our collaborators, WordPlay, which is a wonderful youth literacy program. Amy's going to kick us off with a meditation. After that, we're going to send the Zoom focus over to Jhaleh Akhavan, who is a community engagement associate at the On Being Project. Jhaleh will read the poem, talk about the poem, and inspire us with the prompt. After that, we'll come back. We'll invite anyone who wants to share, and then we'll do a little bit of housekeeping and instructions for further connection at the end. I am super excited for today. It feels like way too many months since we've gathered. So Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, good afternoon. Beautiful to see so many people here today. We're just going to take a couple of moments to get into the experience of our bodies and to connect also with each other, to open some space to be able to receive the poem that we're chewing on and working with today. So first, welcome. Very good to see you. Take a moment and just look around at this family, this constellation of beautiful human beings. And you might even want to flip over to the screen 2 of 2, so you can just really get a sense. And as we're taking each other in, we're also remembering that each person is palpable, is fleshy, is breathing, is sitting in their fullness, has joined us like we have joined ourselves here in this space today. 3D, just like we're 3D even in this 2D space. And so a moment of admiration, and just let's like hand over the heart, feeling a sense of warmth, a sense of arrival, a sense of welcome. And if it feels good to you, you're welcome to close those eyes. And we'll just take some moments. You can keep a hand on the chest. You might even want a hand on the belly. Taking some moments to welcome our breathing into this space. Breathing in, we feel the movement of our bodies. We feel it in our hands. Then exhaling, we feel a contraction. Just breathing in, noticing the shape of our body shifting with our breath. Breathing out, noticing the shape of our body shifting with our breath. Taking some good, deep breaths at your own pace. Noticing the shifting of your body, the changing of the shape of you with every breath. And now start to notice the spine. This back of the body. And what happens to the spine as we breathe in, as we breathe out. The spine responding to the waves of breathing. Becoming longer, folding forward. Allow yourself, as you breathe and notice your spine, to exaggerate this movement just a little bit. Lean into the wave of your breathing and the gentle response or wave of the spine. And just a few more breaths here, indulging the wave of breathing supported by spine. With the eyes closed, the hands can come to rest on the lap. We let this wave movement just settle in as we sit for just a moment as ancient, as sturdy, as steady as an old tree. And ever so slowly, so gently, we start to prepare ourselves to open our eyes back up. Maybe blinking at first and then coming back to ourselves, back to all those sweet boxes on the screen, the wonderful humans connected through the web of poetry.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Amy. I could feel that wave as though we were all on the same shore together. So I'm super excited to turn it over to Jhaleh now for the reading of the poem and the conversation about the poem. Ro, can you turn it over?
Thanks, Ro. Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you, Stacy and Ro, for hosting this, for inviting me to offer up this poem to the group. And it's so good to just drop into this afternoon with everybody. Thank you, everyone who's taken some time out of your day to connect with yourselves and each other and this poem like this. It's really a pleasure to be here. So yeah, I think we can hop in. Thank you, Ro. All right, so thanks, Stacy, for introducing me. My name is Jhaleh. I use she and they pronouns, and as you mentioned, I am joining this from on behalf of On Being, where I work. And the poem that we have today is called Reconciliation, and it's by Yonina Curtin. I'll go ahead and read it. We can just take a moment after I finish reading it to let it settle. And then I'll be offering up a couple reflections that this brought up for me, and a prompt as a doorway into the poem that we can explore in our own writing. Reconciliation by Yonina Curtin. How will I reconcile myself? The Icelander and the Métis, the settler and the indigenous, an ally to myself. Since birth, flung across a chasm, I often wonder, am I to forever be the way across, weak anchors at each end, my spine a flexible deck, load-bearing, and within my cables too much tension. As some try to cross, we all swing wildly in each other's steps, without safety nets. The waves of emotion threaten us all, and then there are times that both sides seek to disown, to cut my cords, let me fall to the rushing waters below. Maybe one day I will just float away, see where the water takes me, but not today. Today I will rebuild, this time no quick fixes, no steel cables or wooden planks, no rust, no rot, no nails necessary, but rather the slow growth of twisted roots from ancient trees, the way across a path made of grandfather, grandmother stones. I will become a self-sustaining structure, gain strength over time, a living root bridge that lasts 500 years. Thank you, Ro, for holding up the poem. Also, thank you to Yonina for offering up this poem. And a little bit about the poet. Yonina Curtin is a Red River Métis Icelandic poet and a graduate of the Simon Fraser University's Writers Studio, where she's currently their BIPOC auntie, supporting and mentoring BIPOC students, Black, Indigenous, and people of color students. In 2016, she received the City of Vancouver's Mayor's Arts Award for an emerging artist in the literary arts category. And she also has books of poetry that include Page as Bone, Ink as Blood, and An Honest Woman. And so in opening up this poem and starting to sit down next to it, I was really drawn to the last line about a living root bridge, and noticing how the language that she's using in this poem goes from these building materials like cables, nails, planks, and turns towards this living root. And so I got curious about some of the roots that are represented in this poem, looking also at the word Métis, and that in the French language, Métis has been used as a word to describe people of mixed ancestry. And the Latin roots of that are to mix. and that specifically in Canada, that Métis is recognized and referring to a distinct collective of culture and identity. And so just thinking about a lot of the histories, a lot of the roots that are contained in language, and also looking at the word reconciliation. So reconcile or reconciliation from a Latin root word meaning again, and conciliare meaning to make friendly. Additional definitions of reconciliation are to restore to union and friendship after estrangement, renewal of friendship after disagreement or enmity, and also an act of harmonizing or making consistent. And that was interesting to me, the act of harmonizing or making consistent. So thinking about fragmentation, thinking about borders, thinking about identifying oneself as mixed in terms of fractions, in terms of half this and half that, or part this and part that, and also the violence of colonization and how this, looking at myself and how I'm meeting this poem, recognizing myself having ancestry of white European settlers in the United States, Iranian heritage that under US foreign policy is politicized and deemed a threat, and also understanding these ongoing waves of displacement that happen on the land in a settler colony. And when the land is legally recognized as a resource rather than a living and dynamic entity. So in sitting with Yonina's poem and thinking about the materials that she's referring to, this physical substance and also the things that are traveling and moving through it. And so I was really interested in how she's looking at self as a poem and what is alive inside of this poem. And that there's a line in here, an ally to myself. There's also a line about within my cables, too much tension. And so thinking about cables as like a suspension bridge, but also in terms of a channel of communication, like sending a cable. And so there's just a lot of evocative imagery, a lot of evocative language that's getting at all of the things that these can carry. And something that I take from this poem is to not diminish with fractions, but to illuminate through the multiple facets that are present in oneself. And so I will highlight a couple of lines from the poem that stood out to me, and then we can go into some writing of our own, using some of these lines, choosing some of these lines, possibly if you'd like to, as a writing prompt or as a doorway into your own writing. And so I think just before calling out specific lines, I wanted to add that something that really just stands out to me overall about the movement and the arc through this poem is going from some of the fears, some of the risks, some of the tensions, some of the separateness into what is alive, what is distinctly alive right now in relationship between those. What is distinctly alive within me and what is distinctly alive in those histories and coming together. Oh, thanks. I see someone was asking, is it possible to see the poem again, please? Thank you. Yeah, Ro, do you mind bringing that up again? Thank you. So let's see. Yeah, so some lines that stood out to myself was early on, an ally to myself. So this idea of allyship with different communities, with different aspects of ourselves, with different things, and also this idea of like being an ally to myself. That was interesting to me, what that means in bringing all of these different parts of ourselves together. And also in each other's steps, this idea that there is a longer arc that we exist within, that our steps are not only our own, that we're stepping into steps that have come before us, and that we're on a path that there will be people in our steps afterward. And thanks so much, Ro, for scrolling. And then this line, today I will rebuild. And so I wanted to offer up a couple of these lines. Feel free to choose your own if there are some that speak to you, but 3 lines that I wanted to offer up as a potential prompt. One of them is the way across, and I'll drop these in the chat. Another one is today I will rebuild. And another one is in each other's steps. And so I'll drop those prompts into the chat. I will also drop, oh, thanks, Ro, for dropping the link to the poem itself if you want to pull that up for yourself. Ro, you're so on top of it. Thank you. And yeah, so feel free to open up that link if you want to look at the poem as a whole for yourself from the chat. And then here are 3 prompts that you're welcome to use as a starting point or ending point. And we'll go ahead and take 10 minutes for your own writing. Feel free to turn your camera off if you want, or feel free to leave it on. And then we'll come back together, and there's no pressure to share, but if you'd like to share, you can. All right. Thanks, everybody. Happy writing.
So everyone, we have about 1 more minute of writing time, and then I'll call you back. So if you can find a good place to wrap up, finish off that last line, we're all going to come back and we'll hand it back over to Jhaleh, who will facilitate our readings. So if you would like to share what you wrote, you can put your name in the chat. Jhaleh will call on you and I will unmute you.
Thanks, Ro. So yeah, again, no pressure to share. And if you'd like to, we'd love to hear your writing. Thanks, Julie. Do you want to start us off?
Sure, thanks. I really enjoyed this prompt and loved the poem. Thank you so much for sharing. I titled this Reconciliation. Reconciliation is an honor that I dream not of, a sometime, someday, when we have found a way to cross between what is true for you and what is true for me. Instead, sleeping, sometimes waking, I conjure as much absence as the dark will hold, which is one galaxy swallowing another, until all we see of the heavens runs with spilled milk and stars. If I set out in any direction in our town, I find we are traveling in each other's steps. There is no way forward that does not spiral back toward you, your turquoise room tucked in a small, low house I cannot enter. Today I will rebuild something like home for the family I will keep. Young son, husband still sleeping, following the deep lane of his dreams. To where? To whom? Thanks.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really love that imagery of one galaxy swallowing another and this like zooming way out and then coming to something really intimate, like someone you love sleeping, and this line about circling back to you. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's see. Nuria Butterfly, I see that you would also like to share. And am I pronouncing your name right?
Oh, yes. Hi, everyone. Yes. Yeah, my name is Oksana, but Nuria, it is my middle name. So yeah, I'm just going to share. Thank you so much. Okay. I chose the phrase, today I will rebuild. As one soul attached to my mother's bosom, the umbilical cord that connected me to my mother might have been cut, a birth in my Angolan African land, rebuilding from scratch with broken fragments, pieces of ancestry. Hands that pulled me to persevere in the most trivial moments. Warm bodies, houses that sheltered a stranger than friend. Rebuilding doesn't look pretty in its texture fabrics of empty canvas. Empty spaces, ripped old wounds, healed, restored, an unlikely season, time, and place. Rebuilding soil stones gathered, cement, tucked in place with order, structure. Its reformity taken shape in the ceilings, walls, and base level of new beginnings, still farther from motherland. What sutures me together, my mother's laughter, her stern and soft voice on the other end of the line on the phone. Her unconditional love has been the rebuilding colors of fuchsia, magenta, emerald green mixed into my life, replacing the dull, unbearable pain from separation of 2 decades in separate lands, rebuilding firm, strong, weakened, but courageous to believe what has never been seen nor touched before. Thank you.
Roxana, thank you so much for sharing. I love when you talked about what sutures me together, my mother's laughter, and then these vibrant colors replacing what you've been feeling before. That was just, thank you. That was really moving and really grounding. I think Troy Bronsink, am I saying your name correctly?
Yep, thank you. I followed the prompt around footsteps and kind of unfinished. Here we go. As I walked around the retreat cabin with my love, I kept sighing, ah. At first, it felt like breathing out. Then my body continued like a prophet, breathing inspiration into the room of rest. And my spine moving with breath, my feet following, almost walking by feel or sound rather than sight. I did some simple tasks, cutting cheese, mixing a cocktail, sweeping, reading, putting on an extra sweater. And lo and behold, there it would be again, my body interrupting, testifying to something I'd forgotten. Somehow the living breath I'm given, a thimble at a time, it's taking on a life of its own. My partner asked what, as if expecting me to describe an aha or name the burdens laid aside like a kid discarding playing cards out the passenger window one at a time. And eventually we just laughed or smiled or a tear would arise. Somewhere deep in my past or in my foreparents' past, the cells that make up this body froze still. And here I confused living with choosing to fight or to melt, confused awakening with thawing out. What does yielding to this breath, returning to the room, have to teach me? Or what is this I'm living within? Thanks.
Thank you, Troy. I'm really loving reading people calling out lines in the chat. If anyone finds this chat distracting, no pressure to check it out, but also it's really beautiful seeing what's resonating with people and what people are dropping into the chat. Yeah, some of the imagery in your poem, Troy, the cells that make up this body froze, confused awakening with thawing out, and testifying to something I'd forgotten. Thank you for that. Emily Little, would you still like to share?
Yeah, I love the idea, Troy, of it being a finished poem. You're like, it's not finished. We only had 10 minutes. This is not finished either. Metallic blood on fingers, a willful tooth falling out of skinny fingers. It is somewhere there, out of reach, out of sight, down the drain, but we both imagine it's still there. Water flows with tears over this tooth. The water, I think, will slowly wear at it. This first baby tooth will wear into as many pieces as there are stars. Where will daughter be when it all wears away? Will she be leaning over a bridge, tears again over heartbreak? Will she be trying to bring tears to her eyes, cutting herself to feel something? Will she be laughing on skates skimming over a frozen lake? Will lakes still be freezing? Will we feel pain anymore after watching so many species go extinct? Will everything or nothing break our hearts when the climate refugees are all of us? Will she follow in my steps, or will all our past steps be erased by water?
Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, that line about, first of all, this imagery of a willful tooth just dropped me right in. It got my attention. And I really appreciate the questions that you ask and like the power of asking questions in a poem. Thank you. Alexis, you mentioned that you would be willing to read. Would you still like to?
Sure. All right. So I went with Today I Will Rebuild. So years spent building shining towers just to watch them crumble under the weight of simple mistakes. Faulty foundations, lost blueprints, wood too weak to stand against Mother Nature. Down they come crashing around me, standing in the fallen pieces.
I love the line standing in the fallen pieces. Ends on a really strong note. Thank you so much, everyone who's sharing, and feel free. I think we have a little bit more time. Elena, would you still like to share?
Sure, I would. Thank you. I'm loving being back here. It feels great. So here's my little thing. The way across. Across my heart are several fields. The one from childhood, a field of daisies with landmines scattered about. It took a long time to identify each ambush, but with grace, I made it through. I am navigating a 65-year-old heart today. The way across is to let it flow. These waves of emotion will not engulf me. They will carry the compassion given me to the other side. I will carry you if needed. The body is a map to your heart with its audible beating in time with forgiveness, the largest landscape of all. Thank you.
Wow, I need to collect myself after hearing that. Thank you. Oh, I love that. I also just really love hearing, I am navigating a 65-year-old heart today. And the line about the body is a map to your heart. That's such a beautiful way to understand the body. I'm so moved. Let's see, I'm catching up in the chat. Was there anyone else who would also like to read before we? Holly,
So I saw Holly and Lauren.
Thanks. Am I skipping you, Lauren? Okay, maybe we have some time to go next to Holly and then to Lauren. Does that work? Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Wow, it's like sacred space here. Thank you all for your incredible words. It's just beautiful to be here. Mine is called The Way Away. And of course, it's unfinished, as we all are. The way across is unseen, unforged, yet for a world of eyes and many billion feet. For it must be our own eyes seeing to believe, our own feet fleeing to sense fear. Our own way is at odds with ourselves, for it does not tread over safe ground, preferring the swells of our hearts and minds. Revisiting returns to the ways once known, we negotiate the detachment we allow. The path is shared and squandered, forcing us through and around the hurdles we've laid in our way, yet leaving no trace or sign for our future selves. We eat the breadcrumbs, feeding the explorers waiting to rise among us, to conquer us then. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. That line about we negotiate the attachment we allow is intriguing. I was like, oh, let me sit with that. Thank you. And then Lauren, would you like to go?
All right, heart beating fast. All right, now I'm starting. No nails necessary. I will use only bare hands and a hard heart to understand or land hard on the places I'm supposed to look. The way across is extra back scratches, dimmed nightlights, endless, resentless laundry when she accidentally wets the bed again. Today, I will rebuild the frame around myself, the care I give without noticing, the kindness reserved for others, redirect and press into my feet on the floor 4 flights up, but still growing down. In each other's steps, we are walking mirrors, showing our true selves in broad daylight, whispering, same, same.
Whew. In each other's steps, we are walking mirrors. The tenderness and power in the poems that you all are sharing is really going to carry me through this day and this week. Thank you. Thank you all who shared. Let's see, I know we're coming up on time and we're reading the poem again before we close. Do we have time? I'm looking at you, Ro and Stacy, for any further sharing, or should we go ahead and wrap up this session?
So what I'd love to do is just say a couple of words before we finish with the reading of the poem again. So I think I speak on behalf of every single one of us to say, wow, wow, wow. What a powerful poem, opening meditation, conversation about the poem, and then it just kept, the rebuilding happened live in front of our eyes. It was just so potent and powerful, the capacity we all have for this conversation, this important conversation. So thank you so much. Couple of things. First of all, Ro will send out an email to everyone. We'd love to receive any version of your poem so that we can put it on our website along with the video of this particular event that lives as a record of our gathering. So you'll all get an email from Ro. We certainly hope you'll join us again next month. We have Brad Aaron Maudlin coming to talk about a fantastic poem. Also, I just wanted to say thanks to Troy, who read, who's one of our collaborators at the Hive. And Amy was here from the Mercantile Library. And of course, our fantastic Amy Tuttle from WordPlay, and Eddie and Jhaleh from On Being. Really a spectacular day. So thank you all. And let us know if you have any needs, questions, or ideas for us at any time. And I'm going to turn it back over to you for a final reading of the poem.
Thank you, Stacy. And I really Stacey, a line that you said when you said the capacity that we all have, I think that is what one of my primary takeaways from this poem is. And I am just feeling really moved by, the tenderness and power in everyone's writing who did share. And if you didn't share, thank you so much for your presence and your listening and for your own writing. And I'm happy to read, but if there's somebody who would like to close us out by reading the poem, can you drop your name in the chat? And I'd be happy to pass that to someone else as well. All right. I don't yet see anyone, so I think I'll go ahead and read. Oh, Emily, would you like to go ahead? All right. Thank you.
Okay, now we go. Reconciliation by Jónína Kirton, or Yonina Curtin. How will I reconcile myself? The Icelander and the Métis, the settler and the indigenous, unallied to myself, since birth, flung across a chasm. I often wonder, am I to forever be the way across? Weak anchors at each end, my spine a flexible deck, load-bearing, and within my cables too much tension. As some try to cross, we all swing wildly in each other's steps. Without safety nets, the waves of emotion threaten us all. And then there are times that both sides seek to disown, to cut my cords, let me fall to the rushing waters below. Maybe one day I will just float away, see where the water takes me, but not today. Today I will rebuild. This time, no quick fixes, no steel cables or wooden planks, no rust, no rot, no nails necessary, but rather the slow growth of twisted roots from ancient trees, the way across a path made of grandfather, grandmother stones. I will become a self-sustaining structure, gain strength over time, a living root bridge that lasts 500 years.
Beautiful, beautiful, everyone. Also, I could not, I forgot to mention Ro. Without Ro, we wouldn't be, Ro is the ultimate space holder for our gathering. So thank you, Ro, for making everything flow so easily. In this work we do, we talk about generative types of encounters in space holding. And this is the most generative space that I've been in a long time. So take all this beauty, have a wonderful week, and we will see you all really soon.